Handshake diplomacy is back as world leaders wrapped the first day of the G7 summit. The day was capped off by a dinner hosted by Queen Elizabeth and other members of the royal family. Earlier in the day, leaders of the G7 nations announced a major donation to help in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic, as President Biden set out to restore relations with some of America's closest allies. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes has more from Cornwall, England.
A royal reception tonight for President Biden and other world leaders who dined with Queen Elizabeth, Prince Charles and Camilla, and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge here in Cornwall.
Here we go, everybody.
It's the first time in nearly 2 years that the heads of the G7 nations have been able to meet in person. They welcomed the newest head of state into the fold before sitting down for the first of 3 days of talks about China, Russia, trade, taxes, and COVID.
I actually think this is a meeting that genuinely needs to happen because we need to make sure that we learn the lessons from the pandemic.
Jointly, the 7 leaders announced a commitment to donate 1 billion vaccine doses to lower-income countries by the end of next year. A show of unity and shared priorities ahead of Mr. Biden's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin next week.
What's your message to Putin?
So you have to deliver it.
President Biden has described this summit as a reset after a turbulent 4 years for the G7 alliance. Karen Pierce was in the room yesterday for Mr. Biden's meeting with the British Prime Minister. She's the British ambassador to the U.S.
We hear President Biden and Prime Minister Johnson say America is back. Was America gone?
I don't think so, but I think it's fair to say that there were some people around the world who did wonder if that implicit, generous undertaking from America to keep the world safe, was that really there anymore?
Nancy Cordes is traveling with the president, and she joins me now. Nancy, what's the mood among all of these world leaders now that they're finally able to see one another in person and talk actually face to face?
I think there's a great deal of relief. You know, they've had to conduct meetings on the phone, over Zoom, which works in a pinch, but it's really not the same. Anybody who has conducted diplomacy will tell you that there's no substitute for being able to read another's body language across the room, to develop that face-to-face rapport that you can only establish when you're meeting in person. And keep in mind, for President Biden, he knows some of these world leaders. He's met some of them before, but others have come onto the world stage since he departed as vice president. So he's still getting to know them, and now he's finally having a chance to do that in person. And particularly for someone like President Biden, who likes to think of his role as diplomat in chief, if you will, he has really been itching to get out there on the world stage, and now he has an opportunity to do it with 3 days of meetings here in Cornwall, and then another summit in Belgium, and then capping that all off, of course, with the big summit with Vladimir Putin in Geneva.
And Nancy, as you've been reporting, the U.S. is donating half of the 1 billion COVID vaccine doses pledged by the G7 leaders. How important is it for the Biden administration to take the lead on this?
I think they're looking to send a message, Lana, that the U.S. is back in a leadership role and the role of a benefactor around the world. The mantra from the previous administration was America first, and the Biden administration is trying to reorient that and say, no, it's the world first, if anything, because it benefits Americans. The argument that the president has been making here, along with his aides, is that the only way that Americans are going to be safe from COVID is if there is this monumental effort to get people around the world, billions of people, vaccinated so that variants aren't allowed to promulgate and come back to the United States. And I have to say that as impressive as it sounds, 1 billion doses of the Pfizer vaccine, keep in mind there's a very long time frame here from the U.S. and the other countries. They're vowing to get this done by the end of next year, so some 18 months from now. And even if they're able to make good on this vow, that's only enough vaccine for about 500 million people. And there are 8 billion people in, across the world, many of whom are still waiting to be vaccinated. So this is clearly going to be a very big, very slow undertaking.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, many people are already starting to look past the G7 to President Biden's trip next week to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. How are preparations for that going?
Well, a lot of what he's been doing here is kind of meant to set the stage for that meeting. Believe it or not, all of these photo ops, Emmanuel Macron today with his arm around President Biden, these big announcements from all these world leaders together, it's no accident. It's meant to send, in part, a message to Vladimir Putin and, frankly, to China that these nations are working together again, that they're united, that they have a common purpose, that they are doling out vaccines without any expectation of getting something in return, which is something that they've accused Russia and China of doing, of playing vaccine diplomacy. And, to send a message to Russia that there is a united front here of Western leaders and that the G7 is looking to reassert itself as a powerful force in the world, so that President Biden is able to come into Geneva with, a lot of world leaders standing behind him when he delivers that message to Vladimir Putin. Now, whether that'll work or not, whether that'll faze Vladimir Putin or not, remains to be seen. But he obviously wants to come into that summit with as strong a hand as he can find.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for staying up late to meet with us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Lana.